Hello, everybody. Shalom. Welcome to our second Soroka Salon, the Promise of the Negev session. Today, we have an exciting session about innovation in the Negev with very exciting speakers. Now, our distinguished partner and host, Professor Bar-Zohar, needs no introduction, but we do have an exciting announcement to share with you about Professor Bar-Zohar, and that is that he announced recently that he is running for president of Israel. So he's now an official candidate with other 4 candidates. We are proud of him and we congratulate him. So now I would like to invite Rachel Heisler, Executive Director of American Friends of Soroka Medical Center, to present the speakers today and to greet. Rachel.
Thank you very much, Pazit. And Michael, welcome back to the Soroka Salon. And I am delighted to congratulate you on your candidacy for President of Israel. I must admit, I'm not at all surprised, as I have always appreciated the very deep relationships you've nurtured with so many of the leaders and giants of Israeli public life, from the early days of the founding of the state until now.
That means that you're going to vote for me.
Oh, Halabai, if only I had the power to vote. But it's a privilege to be greeting you here today. And from the early days of the founding of the state, you've always eloquently integrated your deep historical perspective with your profound love for Israel. Comes through over and over. Your desire for unity, for peaceful coexistence for Israel, alongside the remarkable innovations and achievements that hold so much promise for the future for all of us. It is through the lens of history that you help us to understand the present, reinforcing the path to a future of continued innovation for the advancement of our society. Godspeed to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. You move me very deeply, and I think that we have to proceed. Pleasure. It's very early yet.
Well, we're going to watch it with great interest. And now I'd like to also take a moment and thank all of American Friends of Soroka Medical Center Board of Directors for your commitment to Soroka and to our life-saving mission, and offer our deep gratitude to Deborah Cherky, who is spearheading our Soroka Salon series. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our webinar. And those of you who are joining a Soroka Salon for the first time, we are delighted that you have joined us. We have some really amazing guests with us today. Danielle Einhorn is the CEO of Tech 7, known as Tech Sheva in Hebrew, an NGO promoting tech entrepreneurship in the Negev. He himself is a social entrepreneur who was born and raised in the Negev. His expertise is in ecosystem development via innovation and in tech communities in cities and regions of the second tier. With a BA in business from the Naval Academy and the University of Haifa and an MBA from Ben Gurion University of the Negev, Danielle has guided many Negev startups, counseling on early stage venture building. Lital Kiperman Vaknin is the head of innovation and strategic partnerships at the Perez Center for Peace and Innovation. She is a seasoned business development professional with international expertise in investments, M&A, and strategic partnership management for the high-tech industry. Lital is the head of innovation and strategic partnerships department at the Perez Center. She is responsible for building the business activities of the center, positioning the center as Israel's innovation center. Before joining the Perez Center, Lital was part of the corporate development team of Amdocs and also has experience facilitating connections with the Russian market for Israeli startups. Welcome, Lital. Welcome, Danielle. And our third guest today is one of Soroka Medical Center's true healthcare heroes. Dr. Victor Novack is the head of the Research Authority and Clinical Research Center at Soroka Medical Center. And he is also the head of the internal medicine department there. He's an internationally recognized expert in clinical research design. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he served as director of the COVID-19 department for several months. Dr. Novack is also a senior researcher in the Department of Anesthesia, Critical Care, and Pain Management at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. Thank you all for joining us here today. And now back to Pazit, the American Friends of Soroka Medical Center's Director of Development, who today is our intrepid moderator for Soroka Salon. Back to you, Pazit.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and everyone for coming. And so just to remind us that last time, the first session, we talked about Ben-Gurion and leadership. So before we go to Professor Bar-Zohar, to connect the dots between innovation and leadership, we want to offer you a special greeting from Ruvik, the mayor, Reuven Danilovich, the mayor of Be'er Sheva since 2009, with an exciting message for us. I'm going to share the screen and show you the message.
אנחנו מצויים ברגע היסטורי. הוקם בבאר שבע רובע החדשנות הראשון מסוגו במדינת ישראל. הוא נמצא במרכז העיר, ממוקם בין אוניברסיטת בן גוריון בנגב, למרכז הרפואי האוניברסיטאי סורוקה, פארק ההייטק, מערך הסייבר הלאומי, מטה התקשוב, כולם בכפיפה אחת בעצם מדברים חדשנות, מדברים אל העולם. המרכז הרפואי סורוקה הוא עוגן מאוד מרכזי. הוא לא רק מתכנס פנימה אל עצמו, הוא יוצא החוצה למחקרים משותפים, לשיתופי פעולה בינלאומיים. מכאן החשיבות הגדולה ופריצת הדרך הבינלאומית שמתרחשת ממש בימים אלו.
So this is, oops, let me just close this. This is the message about innovation, and one more message about leadership and the connection to Ben Gurion before we proceed.
דוד בן גוריון הוא מייסד המדינה. הוא הנחיל לנו כמה ערכים מאוד חשובים. מדינת ישראל היא לא מובנת מאליה. אנחנו נאבקים עליה בכל יום. במערכת הבריאות שלה, תחבורה, תעסוקה, התיישבות, צבא ההגנה לישראל, אקדמיה. אבל אולי גולת הכותרת שלו, הצוואה שלו, בנגב ייבחן העם בישראל ומדינתו. אנחנו, כולנו, משתדלים לעשות את הכל, כדי להגשים את הצוואה הזו, על מנת שבאר שבע והנגב יהיו המטרופולין האיכותי ביותר במדינת ישראל.
So thank you, and now to you, Professor Michael Bar-Zohar.
Thank you. Ben-Gurion told me once that the Negev is the cradle of the Jewish people, of Israel. And he proved it with a lot of verses from the Bible, from the Tanakh, proving that all the founding fathers, starting with Abraham and ending with the kings of Israel, came and settled in the Negev. And for him, the Negev is the test for the future of Israel. It's 60% of our territory. In 1955, he wrote an article saying that in this 60% of Israel, we have only 8% of the population. We must settle in the Negev. And if we don't conquer the wilderness, the desert will conquer us. And then he thought about all these ideas of innovation. He thought that the science can bring the Negev back to what it used to be thousands of years ago, to be a garden, actually. So first of all, he said, we must desalinize the water of the ocean. That's very important, to bring water to the Negev. Then we have to harness the sun, to harness the sunshine and use the solar power. Then we have to harness the wind and take the wind. Then we have to build in the Negev a series of lakes, artificial lakes, which will actually receive and gather the water from all the rains in the Negev during the winter. And therefore, another thing which is very important is to study the vegetation in the Negev, to find out what makes it grow in spite of the fact that the land is salty, that the land is very, very dry, and still there are quite a lot of trees and weeds in the Negev. We must use them in order to develop. Okay, so he came to his friends and he said, we had to develop the Negev. And they came back to him after a couple of weeks and they said, the experts say it's impossible. So what he said? He said, fire the experts. The experts are people who know what happened in the past. We need experts who can explain to us how to do it in the future. He said, for me, the Negev was a place where I could start again my life. I think I told you last time that once when he was coming back through the Negev to Jerusalem, he saw a group of young people building a kibbutz. And he said, I want to be one of them. Because I came to the land of Israel wanting to start everything anew. And that was his goal in life. And for him, the development of the Negev was actually the proof that the state of Israel can exist. And our also contribution by our, let's say, by our conquering the desert to contribute to all these nations in the world who have huge deserts and don't know how to turn them into a flourishing garden. Therefore, that's the legacy of Ben-Gurion about the Negev. He also believed that Sde Boker, the kibbutz of Sde Boker, should become the Israeli Oxford, where things would be studied, explained, published, and researched. That's what Ben-Gurion left us as his legacy. Now, to hear about the Negev and the other innovation questions, we are going to turn to Lady Innovation herself, which is Lital Kiperman Vaknin. Lital, please explain to us, tell us, because this is kind of wonderful story which you hold in yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Michael Bar-Zohar. It's my privilege and honor to be here today. And thank you also, Pazit, for having me today. So I actually prepared a short presentation in which I will try to describe the story of Israel as the innovation nation, how we became the startup nation. I will put a little bit of focus also on the digital health sphere. And also we'll speak a little bit about what is going on today in the Negev, in the south of Israel. But of course, Daniel will be able to elaborate much more about that. So if it's okay with you guys, I will share now my screen. Just let me know that you see it okay.
Yes, we're seeing it great.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think that you already you heard the introduction about me. So I'm the head of innovation and strategic partnerships at the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. And before I start to talk a little bit about Israel as the innovation nation, I do want to tell you a little bit about the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. And now hearing about Ben-Gurion for Professor Michael Bar-Zohar, it's so inspiring because Paris was like the right hand of Ben-Gurion. He was his protege. We have so many sculptures of Ben-Gurion in Paris room at the center, and I think that they shared a vision. And today we are like at the eve of the Memorial Day for the Holocaust. And I think that correlates a lot with what Professor Bar-Zohar spoke about regarding the Negev being the future of Israel, because also Peres believed that people that are coming to Israel cannot only come to see Yad Vashem and to learn about the past of Israel and what started Israel, but they have to have a place that also tells the story of the future of Israel. And that was the vision behind starting of and building the Israeli Innovation Center, that is actually telling this entire story of the past, present, and future of the story of the Israeli innovation story. And really, the vision behind it is to be this kind of place that enables this sense of enablement around the people that are coming there to understand the potential of the future of Israel and their ability to be innovative themselves. So this, of course, followed 25 years of activity. The Paris Center for Peace started since 1996, believing that peace building needs to be not just done top down, but also bottom up, and to have the ability to speak, to have people-to-people activity. So I invite you all to come to the Israel Innovation Center. So I'm very proud to say that it became the gateway to Israel. So, before Corona time, we had so many high esteemed delegations coming to the center. We had over 100,000 people visiting. So now that hopefully Corona is a little bit settling down here in Israel, hope to see you all with us. And I do want to start with this kind of quote of what Peres used to say when he was asked, what drove innovation in Israel. And he used to say, in Israel, we are a land that is lacking natural resources, but we learn to appreciate the greatest national advantages, which is our mind, because we are 95% brain, 5% land. That's it, right? So we came here, there was nothing here. We needed to build everything from scratch. And when you look a little bit about, the innovation map around the world, then you can see that, we are very, very unique in our area, right? So there is not much innovation in our area. So it is very, very unusual that Israel became such a leader in innovation in our area. So around, this like blue areas, you can see the top innovation hubs in the world. So when we're trying to explain a little bit, what are the main drivers and what made Israel such an innovative country, of course, there are so many reasons, right? But we are starting with this point of necessity, right? So as we said, we came here, there was nothing here. We had no choice. We had to develop our food resources. We had to develop our water resources. And, as we got closer to 1948 with the establishment of the State of Israel, we had to develop our military capabilities, which of course had a huge effect on the technological knowledge and capabilities here in Israel. And of course, also on the people, think about every 18-year-old boy or girl that is going to getting drafted to the military and, getting aware and some of them, can be responsible for this $20 billion technological project when they're only 18. So think about, the board is, the variety and the options that it enables. And the second reason is diversity, right? So we are a land of many, many nations coming here to Israel. And it's a known fact that countries that are based on immigrants are usually more entrepreneurial, because immigrants in their nature had to overcome a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties, which is an inherent part of every entrepreneur. The third element is this kind of world that doesn't really, exist in any other language, which is the chutzpah element, which pretty much says that we don't take no for an answer. We will always try to find a way in through the window if the door closes. And also there is this kind of, there is no no fear to fail. Okay, so it's okay to fail. It's part of the culture here. Every entrepreneur knows that he can fail and open another venture and it will be totally fine. And, we have this kind of, this activity that is usually it's called fuck up nights, right? So entrepreneurs get together and hear the failure stories of their ventures, because it's a known fact that you can learn much more from failure than a success. So I think that, that together is this kind of element of chutzpah. So is Israel such an innovative country? So the number says, yeah, right? So we are a very small country. I think that all the participants in this webinar know, we are a population of 9 million people. We are a very, very small geographical borders. You can drive from south to north from about, 8 hours. max. But we have close to 7,000 startups, active startups. We are leading in the world in investments in R&D in the percentage of GDP. We are leaders in the world in VC investments. Some of the scales are considering us to be the second largest startup hub after Silicon Valley. Some say we are in the 5th place, so it depends on which index you are examining, but still we are very high up. And we have more than 350 multinational R&D centers that have a huge impact on this entire innovation ecosystem here in Israel. Just to give you this kind of glance of what's happening now. So I think that everybody now hears what's going on, in Wall Street, and so much money is getting poured to the markets, and that makes a huge effect on this kind of growth stage that's now happening in Israel to startups. A lot of startups are going and doing IPO, doing SPAC. If you heard about that, going into Wall Street. We have over 100 Israeli technology companies publicly traded on the NASDAQ, and it's just like rising. Like every week, you can hear about another company going into NASDAQ, which is amazing what's going on here. Out of the companies that is blurred here, so there is the Nanox, which is trying to reimagine X-ray technology. So it's very interesting. You can take a look, but you can also see here a little bit about valuations. Usually it used to be about being a unicorn, being a valuation of at least $1 billion. Now we are talking from unicorn to decacorn for $10 billion valuation. So $1 billion is not enough anymore. It's considered to be like the low end now. And we do have a lot of unicorn companies. So we have close to 50 unicorn companies. So some of the leading ones you see here. And again, the numbers just keep rising and rising. Next Insurance, for instance, just now raised another round after being valued for $2 billion, just raised another round after 6 months and is now valued for $4 billion. So like the things that are going now in the high-tech ecosystem here in Israel, by the way, due to the Corona situation, is unbelievable. So I think it's a very exciting time to be here, I think, in the high-tech ecosystem now.
Lital, there was a question about the effect of coronavirus on the ecosystem, economically and in terms of innovation.
Yeah. So I think that maybe I'll finish and then we'll leave some time to questions at the end, because I do talk about, some of the effects during the presentation, if that's okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll move on. So I'm talking about, this ecosystem world is getting, I'm talking about it all the time, but I want to make sure that really understand what it's all about, okay? First of all, there is this triple helix model that is, trying to stipulate what makes an ecosystem successful. What does it mean to have an ecosystem? And it suggests that we have to have, strong academic institutions, government support, and a very strong private sector in order to create a strong ecosystem. And, the ecosystem, as the word itself suggests, of course, it's a lot of, relationships between a lot of players. And that is a very, very important message, because it's not enough that we have this kind of, so many startups that are active in Israel. The startups on themselves will not be able to operate if there wasn't this kind of very, very supportive ecosystem that knows how to support them. Because think about it, right? Without VCs that will bring money into the startup cannot really exist. I'll talk a little bit about the government here in Israel, and everybody knows that the political situation in Israel is very, very complicated, right? It's not easy, but I have to give some of the credit here to the government, at least for things that have been done in the previous years. For instance, I'll give you an example. In the 90s, the government started a project Yuzma, which is actually the creation and the building of the local VC ecosystem. They actually built the plan of local VCs that partnered with VCs from abroad in order to start to ignite this entire activity. And those VCs had a very, very good statistics in the success of the companies that they made, because they learned a lot from the methodologies of the VCs from the international community that joined them in that partnership. And that was one of the seeds for the beginning of the startup ecosystem here in Israel in the 90s. So that is very important. Another example is the Innovation Authority. The Innovation Authority has a budget in order to correct market failures in places where the private market does not invest money in startups, because it takes too much time to see the return on the investment, because it requires too much of an investment. So the government steps in with the Innovation Authority and knows to support those segments. So for instance, we are talking about digital health or medical technology. That is one segment that the government did a lot of investment in order to enable the growth in there, because think about it, it requires a lot of time until you develop the technology, until you test it out, until, you know, this FDA approvals. Think about it, it's very, very long term. So VCs want to see quick return on the investments. So there was this kind of market failure. So the government stepped in. So that is just one example. Academia, of course, very, very important, right? So this kind of connection and bringing of the research and the ability to have the IP starting in the academia is a lot of time the basis of a lot of good startups that are successful today in the ecosystem. Multinationals, I talked about it. We have more than 350 here. So again, it's part of a cycle. Think about an engineer starting to work in the multinational, at Apple here in Israel, learning a lot, getting very professional, understanding this kind of very, very important problem in the industry that he's working in. Then he's living with this knowledge and ability and knows how to build, a startup that will answer that problem. Accelerators, communities, they are very, very important factor. And again, Daniel will, I believe, will be able to talk much more about that. But again, the possibility to support each other, to talk with one another, to get this kind of introductions, that is very, very important. And again, accelerators take early stage companies and giving them the basis of how to grow their ventures, getting them to know how to speak with VCs, how to build their pitches. So every element here in this slide is very important for an ecosystem to thrive. I put the HMOs in like this kind of big red because I do want to talk about them in regards to digital health and what's going on here in Israel. And of course, you asked about the corona. And, now we are this kind of known as this vaccine nation. And it's only because of the HMOs, right? So they have the ability, the operation in order to do that. And they knew how to connect with the government, with the startups, by the way. They have on the regular basis, they have a lot of opportunities to share databases of, information, anonymous information about the patients. And that gives a lot of ability for startups to do this kind of POCs and understand how they can provide solutions. So HMOs in the sphere of digital health is also very, very important. I'll move on because I don't have a lot of time, but I did want to show here a little bit what's going on in Israel in terms of the different verticals, right? So you can see that we have a lot of different themes or sectors that the Israeli ecosystem has offering in. But you can see here that cybersecurity is one of the most advanced verticals, with a lot of companies, a lot of investment that went in that. Fintech, smart mobility, but digital health, take a look here. It's a very, very growing segment. And also you can see here a little bit, I put, this kind of data that even already in 2018, over 50% of the companies that raised money were companies that were in decision support and diagnostics, that is emphasizing the rise of AI as an industry growth engine. And AI and machine learning is this kind of horizontal element that is taking part of each of the verticals that you see here. And it's something that Israel took a very good step and a very good leap, and knows how to provide very good and interesting solutions in terms of AI. A little bit of a drill down to what is happening in digital health. Oh, sorry about that. So if we would look about the segments inside of digital health, then you can see here a little bit of the breakdown. So we have the digital therapeutics leading the way with afterwards remote monitoring. Think about, again, Corona, all the thing of telemedicine was very, very important. You can't go to the doctor, you can't see him face to face. You have to have this remote opportunities, and that grew a lot during the Corona time, and diagnostics as well, again. And now you can see also the breakdown between the pre-released and the post-released in terms of the maturity of the companies themselves. And now I'm getting to the reason that we actually gathered here together, and to talk a little bit about the innovation ecosystem in the Negev. And I have to say it's nice, but it's very, very small, right? So if you look here at the diagram, of course, the majority of the startups are located in Tel Aviv in the center, and the rest of the areas are very, very small, and the south has a lot of growth still to do. But I have to say that it's becoming more and more vibrant. There is a lot of, again, discussions about budgets that are going to go to the Negev, to the south. All this, the trends of the desert tech is getting stronger and stronger, especially now that we have the Abraham Accords, by the way, and they have a lot of interest to better understand how to leverage the technologies of Israel in terms of what is problematic for them. And that's, of course, part of the problems of being a part of a desert. That is something that is putting a lot of push in that areas. And you can see here that, there is a lot of bootstrap. So it means that there is a lot of companies that are starting out. And that, again, is because of their different programs of communities, of accelerators, of, people that are entities that are opening this kind of the push to create this kind of vibrant ecosystem at the south. So that is very, very important. So if I try to conclude and go back, if you remember the slide of, this kind of elements that are building the ecosystem. So just a few examples, if we spoke about the government. So there is this kind of connection of the entire south area to the center by building a lot of the facilities, if it's the roads, if it's the train facilities, that now actually the south of Israel is getting much closer to the center, because it takes you much less time to get there. And you also saw what Rubik Danilevich said about Be'er Sheva. Be'er Sheva is a high-tech hub, the innovation hub that they're building. A lot of activities is being done around Be'er Sheva. And again, that is a very strong element that is bringing a lot of, the multinationals, right, that are coming because of that. So we have Gev Yam High-Tech Park also situated in Be'er Sheva. And of course, Soroka is a very, very strong hospital in the area that is promoting a lot of the research of, again, this kind of POCs and the ability to provide startups with this kind of opportunities for POCs, for piloting. The academia with the Ben Gurion University that is also attracting a lot of young people, again, promoting the research. that is a very strong element. The communities that we have at the Negev, again, Tech Sheva, Daniel will talk about it. Desert Tech is a new community that is starting out with the Mirage Foundation. We have 12 accelerator programs at the South area. And, also about the military, there is this, very grand plan to move the elite units of the IDF to the Negev, and that's again attracting very high value of population to the Negev.
Thank you. For the sake of time, we have 2 more speakers. Please wrap up, and we'll go back with the questions.
Okay. Yeah. No. So I think that you got the message. You can see here the leading verticals, and I will just finish with another quote with Peres. He used to say that people without fantasies never go on to do fantastic things. So I encourage you to dream big, always be optimistic. That's part of our motto. And thank you for the time here.
Thank you very much. Toda rabba. Professor Bar-Zohar.
Thank you, Lital. Thank you very much. This is a homage to the Paris Center. You opened the world to us of all this innovation, and to Shimon Peres himself. I remember he once asked me, "What do you think about nanotechnology?" I had not the foggiest idea. I said, "What?" He said, "Nanotechnology is the technology of very, very small things." I had no idea. So I brought a group of people to see him. The same reaction, we didn't know. So he said, "You don't understand anything." And he started running around and bringing scientists and bringing investors. And in a few years, he made Israel number 1 or 2, you know better than I do, in nanotechnology, which is the technology of the future. That was Shimon Peres. And his center deserve all our respect and our thanks. Now I'm going to introduce Daniel Einhorn, who is the guy, who is the story of the Negev, actually. He was born there, grew up there, and today, Daniel, you're doing a very important thing, actually keeping the Negev for us and keeping us for the Negev by your companies. But you can explain that much better than I can. Go ahead.
Unmute, please.
Hey, thank you very much for that. This is a wonderful format, by the way. I think that, and thank you for those kind words, Professor Bar-Zohar. I really think that the background of giving the Ben-Gurion vision and the leadership, together with Lital's introduction to the ecosystem in general, would actually be really helpful now. And I really believe that. I think that Beersheba, there was this moment at the end of Lital's presentation talking about the small Negev ecosystem. We shouldn't be shy about it. I think it's what we're seeing is actually an opportunity. So everything here is really about leadership. I'll show you, I'll skip just one slide ahead, and just because it relates to what I'm saying right now. But so I was born in 1989. I'm just mentioning the year because you see the slide with the 2012. And I can tell you that this is what we're seeing is the scene of the place of the high-tech park, the Gav Yam Negev high-tech park in Beersheba. We're seeing the city of Beersheba. This is 2012. I can tell you that there was much less when I was born and in those next 2 upcoming decades. But we're seeing a tremendous boom in the past 10 years or so. Of course, the Soroka Center and Ben-Gurion University are a major part, not only of it, but probably of like every, together with municipality and government, of course, part of probably every major move done in the Negev and definitely in Beersheba, the crown jewel, the metropolitan city, a very important city. But I'm trying to get at that this is all product of leadership and vision. And I think that's maybe the motif of the words said so far, and especially by Professor Bar-Zohar, speaking on behalf or like continuing Ben-Gurion's vision. So I'm part of that movement. I don't care that things are small right now. That's my motivation. We started out not too long ago, and just in the few years that I've been myself involved in this, we've got so far ahead. So this is another picture of just the high-tech park. Of course, I just have to say, like with a small asterisk, that a side note, that the Negev in its entirety is developing very fast. Beersheba leading this movement. We have, so in size, there is about 200 startups in the Negev. Obviously, compared to the more than 6,000 that Lital mentioned in Israel, that's a rather small number, but we're talking about a growth from like 0 to that in very few years. The high-tech park itself was started in 2012, 2013, and by now we have there 2,500 engineers over there working there, and 4 buildings out of the planned 15. So yeah, that's like a really great vision. And I'm actually accompanying that, and maybe I'd like to give you like my personal view before talking a little bit more about Tech 7. But I was born and raised in the Negev, and after finishing my service as a naval officer, missile ships and stuff like that, after finishing that, I really wanted to open a business. I actually started out in Tel Aviv. And I wanted something kind of different for my lifestyle, not business-wise, because business-wise Tel Aviv is great. So I moved down south and I opened a startup in Beersheba, which was, then I think it was 2016. It was still, the high-tech park was still very young. There was not much of a scene over there. And it was difficult. I got to tell you, it was very difficult. And I learned a lot about the special difficulties of a startup in the Negev firsthand. At those times.
Daniel, what was the biggest challenge for you when you started a startup in Beersheba?
The biggest challenge was actually a psychological one. It was kind of feeling left in the desert. and the reason was that we were really a very small bunch with nothing to connect us together. And that was really difficult because you need to network a lot as a starting business, not even definitely a tech business, but any business, you need to network a lot. And I found myself needing to leave Beersheba for Tel Aviv many times to get the network I need, the connections I need, the knowledge I need. And that all changed when I met the wonderful people of Tech 7, an organization I joined in 2017 and been leading for the past 2 years or so. And so I'm not, just presentation for a sec. Yeah, I'll skip that. But it really resonated with me personally to build a network, a community, a place where people like me could connect in order to live in the Negev and work in what they love in the Negev. Okay, so this sounds maybe a little bit trivial. I don't know, depending on where each of you participants, those hearing are from. But when you're in what we call the tier of the second degree city, like you're not in Manhattan, for example, I know, then you have certain challenges, but you want to be able to live anywhere and do anything. And I think as a society, this is very, very important in order not to have like this division of very small condensed places where all the knowledge, all the wealth, everything is over there. And the rest of us, like, what is that? What we should do agriculture and be, I don't know, farmers. So you could be an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur from everywhere. I think that's the major theme of for us young entrepreneurs, that we want to live where we want to live in the desert in this example, have all the wonderful qualities that the desert gives as a lifestyle, but still be able to be a tech entrepreneur. And that vision that was then impossible, which I think Ruvik Danilovich is the best, or maybe definitely a prominent promoter of, is working. And now we have many companies, many startup companies, many MNCs in Beersheba, and it's happening. And people like me can live here in Beersheba and open startups and have that facility of knowledge, money, network, connections, all of those employees, all of those things. So that was the vision in general. I won't go over this in detail because it's very much like what Lital said about the entire Israeli ecosystem, but just like about the role of Tech7. I didn't even speak directly about Tech7. So Tech7 is a nonprofit. First of all, it's a nonprofit organization working on promoting the Negev entrepreneurship scene ever since 2015. And our major role in design and like in thinking and concept is actually looking at this picture that we're looking right now and understanding the different agendas of all those very important players in the ecosystem, and then connecting them, or maybe even like a little bit directing them by providing a certain platform or suggesting all kinds of collaborations. So, and this is very important. This is a key function I think that I would recommend as an ecosystem catalyst. I would recommend to any ecosystem, when you have a third-party player, someone whose only function is to promote the entire ecosystem, then you get really pure agenda and knowledge about recruiting, about like mobilizing the entire ecosystem in a socioeconomic manner, like that provides benefits to all of the players while looking at the public interest first. So I think this is working really well in Beersheba, us facilitating that process. And much of the times I find myself in the center of many discussions with all those exact players, with Ben-Gurion University and the Soroka Medical Center. For example, in Ruvik's video, we saw him talking about the Negev, the district, the innovation district in Beersheba, bringing together cybersecurity, and as we see, a major vertical in Israel, with digital health and healthcare in general, and the desert tech, all in one place. So us Tech7, I'll give you our day-to-day in a second, but for us Tech7, we are a very important player in that process because we can connect all, we are the only ones that have a reason to be already connected with all those different players, giving a platform, physical and digital, for all those innovators to come together under one place. This is just like, you could see our beginnings. Our day-to-day is much revolving around activities, meetups, gatherings of entrepreneurs. I'll show you a few pictures just ahead that you'll get the feel of it, but really connecting people and giving education programs and knowledge giving programs for mostly entrepreneurs, but also around that. So like digital marketing and programmers. And then we give them both the ability to meet and connect with people like themselves, which is, as I've said, psychologically has a huge value, but also give the direct knowledge so they can keep growing each in their own respective field. So basically that all sums up to 4 different missions that all should result in socioeconomic growth. And those missions are education and everything I said about giving knowledge to all the different entrepreneurs and players in the scene. Creating some kind of culture. This is the atmosphere I've been talking about. If I was completely alone in 2016, now every Monday and Thursday you could meet a new entrepreneur, ask them about what they're doing. Maybe there's a step ahead, maybe they're a step before. You can give them something, you could get something. This is because it's entered our language, and it wasn't like that before.
Thank you, Daniel. For the sake of time, we must move on. Is there any last sentence you want to share with us before we move on?
Basically, just I'll show you just like an example of what it looks like. Just one last example. So this is from our startup competition every year. I have also photos of 2019 and 2020. Every year we do a startup competition. We find the best startup in the Negev and we invest in them 500,000 shekels so they could promote their startup and employees. And that's just like an example of everything I've been saying so far.
Thank you. Professor Bar-Zohar, how important is it to connect between that nurturing of a social community, socially and educationally, nurturing that sense of belonging, and the visionary leadership, and actually coming to fruition with the development region like the Negev?
You see, because a few years ago, nobody would have believed that the Negev can become a kind of hothouse for development and for innovation. And we have to thank people like Daniel, who are actually devoting their lives of bringing people to the Negev and keeping the people born or raised in the Negev like himself to stay in the Negev and develop all their talents and their capacities in the Negev itself. So this is just a very dramatic change. And that's why we're seeing today in the Negev, in kibbutzim, in moshavim, in the other places, things happening which would have been unbelievable 20 years ago. Now, one of the examples is, of course, Soroka. And I have to introduce Professor Victor Novack, who is the head of clinical research of Soroka, who is head of internal medicine, and is also a professor for medicine. Now, we have little time, but don't worry. This guy knows about innovation in Soroka more than anybody else. And we are giving you today just a sample, because next session of our webinar, he is going to be the star and to tell us quite a lot about the innovations. But even today, I think he has quite a lot of important things to tell us. Professor Novack, go ahead, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and thank you for having me here today. Probably I will start, and actually I will take only a very few minutes. And the best way probably to start is to tell you my personal story. As all you can hear, my accent is very different from the accent of the previous speakers. And that is because I came from Soviet Union, as almost 40% of citizens of the Negev and Beersheba, and maybe more than 60% of the medical personnel at Soroka University Medical Center. I came to Israel when I was 19, and because of Zionism and some other crazy ideas, maybe because I wanted to just run away from my home at Moscow, but that was a long time ago. And I came to Negev, and that was quite a shock. Coming from Moscow, the city at that time of 12 million people, to Negev, to the desert, it shocked me. But actually, I started to love this region and people here. And from this moment, I never left Negev, except for being in Boston for quite a few years, and then being on the line between Boston and Negev. I raised my family here, and I was in the army for 5 years as a military physician. My family is, of course, in Negev. And every time when I left Negev, I felt that something is missing, and I always came back, even though, again, Boston can be so much more appealing than the yellow desert during August heat. But here we have something special that we don't have in any other place. And to add to this, and probably that would be the last part for today, it is that maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when I came back and people asked me, why are you coming back from Boston? It's so much greener, so much nicer, and all these wonderful things that you can do at Harvard and with FDA, and I worked and still working with many companies. My answer was that I love it here because I'm a Zionist, and I do believe that we need to be here, and my patients are here. But it was a bit of an apologetic text, and I wasn't very sure. Now the answer is very simple, because that's the best place to be if you want to be participant of the growing industry and of growing innovation. That is the place to be. And this is because we have so many unique things that we will touch in our next session, but just maybe a flavor about it. That's probably one of the few places in the world that we have one medical center for a population of 1.2 million people. They're not going to private sector. They're not going to other hospitals. They're coming to us. They're insured by the same HMO that owns our hospital. So we have their medical data from the cradle to, God forbid, their grave. That's one. Second one, it is, let's assume that we all believe in climate change. And think about this. Negev is like a peek into the future. That's what the rest of the, say, Europe would be experiencing in 20, 30, 40 years if we are not successful in preventing it. And being Russian, I'm very pessimistic. So the chances of preventing the global heating is probably not that good. But we can actually show the world, together with our neighbors here, how you can deal with it, how you can live and prosper in this area. We are the future. And so you can learn here what you need to do in order to have a healthy population in this hot area. And thus, I can conclude that here we have a very unique situation, and we have those niches in which we have a very high chance of success. And my answer why I'm here, it's very, very simple, because it's the best place to be right now if you want to play in this game. And again, thank you for having me, and we will tell much more in our next session.
Thank you so much, Professor Novack. Большое спасибо. Thank you very much.
Пожалуйста.
And you know, we started with Ben-Gurion, and we are ending with Ben-Gurion exactly by what you said, that what we do in the Negev, what you people are doing in the Negev, is going actually to present the contribution of Israel to all these nations around the world, where the desert is gaining ground and where the heat is gaining ground. Thank you so very much. And I must tell you something to our guests. We also are learning. We think that we know about Soroka and about the Negev and everything, but when we hear all what you have to tell us, we are also learning from that. And thank you so much for helping us. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have much time for question answers. So, but the good news is that we heard that our speakers addressed most of the questions in their very thorough and empowering presentations. So we're gonna end by asking you really, each one of you, to think about one thing about innovation in the Negev that you are proud of most. It can be personal, it can be impactful globally, but you personally, one thing that you are most proud of in the Negev that has to do with innovation in the Negev. Victor will go first, then Lital, Daniel, and we'll wrap up with Professor Michael Bar-Zohar.
So I'm the first. That's a tough task and an unexpected question, but I would say the following. What I'm the most proud of, it is how we learn to deal with the climate in Negev. And the people who don't know what is the climate in Negev, you can imagine an oven in August, and that is what you have on outside. And we don't have heat strokes, and we don't have old folks suffering and dying. And this is something that I'm immensely proud, because we developed the ways how we can prevent those things.
Thank you very much. That's very touching. Lital?
I think one of the core elements that we are trying to, to bring awareness to by the activities that we are doing at the center is the importance of inclusion, of diversity, of bringing the, this kind of the story of innovation and the enablement to be part of that story to all parts of Israel. And this, the activity of the periphery in terms of becoming closer to the innovation story, that is very, very important for the entire state of Israel. So I think that all of the activity in this kind of rising hub of innovation in the Negev is not important only to the Negev, it's important to the entire state of Israel. So that makes me happy.
Thank you very much, Lital. Daniel?
Apologies for being self-centered, but I draw so much pleasure of what we do in Tech 7, and so much, I think that we're creating something important every day, and mostly giving a platform for all the startups to shine, and there's no greater pleasure. And I think that we built something great, and we're continuing to build something tremendous with all the players I was talking about in my presentation.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And finally, Professor Bar-Zohar, before you answer, I just want to remind everybody that for your support of $180 or more to soroka.org/children, I'm going to put it in the chat, you will receive the biography of David Ben-Gurion book signed by the author, Professor Michael Bar-Zohar. Thank you so much, Michael Bar-Zohar, for your generosity with advancing our life-saving mission.
Thank you, Pazit. And I want to say what I'm very proud of is to see that the desert has come back alive for thousands of years, since the time of the kings of Israel, where there were towns, cities in the Negev, and people were living here. For thousands of years, this place had become a desert. Nobody cared about it. Nobody came to live in it. And now, look at that and look at what's developing and what's going to happen. And then you'll understand that impossible is not Hebrew. And the word impossible should be struck off our dictionaries. Thank you very much. You made it possible. Good night.
Okay, toda rabba. Thank you everybody for a very empowering and session. Check out soroka.org/salon to view the recorded session and sign up for the future sessions. Toda rabba. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Toda.